Hey guys, today I wanted to speak about the speed that you perform your reps. So, is it better to have explosive movements where you move the bar as fast as you possibly can? Or is it much better to have slow and controlled repetitions? So, okay, that on the surface of things, nobody really wants to be seen as doing crazy fast reps because it implies a lack of control. So you're doing bicep curls as fast as you can and you're swinging your body and you're lucky that you don't bash out your teeth with the bar. And obviously that doesn't look like it's going to be of any benefit for a number of different reasons, such as you have no mind muscle connection, you're using momentum to move the bar rather than the muscle, you're utilizing different muscle groups than the ones you think you're training. So there's loads of reasons as to why moving explosively and fast may not be ideal, sport setting aside. So we're going to leave that sort of athleticism aside for now. But on the other side of that, we have slow and controlled reps, where each phase is given a designated number or a phase. So you have say for example, we start off with something like squats. So you're standing at the top of the bar on your back, and that's the top position. The rep starts with you descending down to the bottom position. Maybe you have a slight pause at the bottom. You drive out of the bottom position up to the top, slight pause, and then you begin the repetition again. So they can be given different numbers to denote speed or cadence for the repetition. Now, moving slowly and under control obviously implies that you're focusing on the muscles that you're working. You're not generating any excess momentum. You're not involving muscles that you don't want to. It's clearly going to be pretty okay for the joints because they're not undergoing any excessive forces unless the load is, seriously high. And so why not just do everything really slow and controlled? Now, there are people with opinions and research behind them that are much cleverer than I am that I want you to have a listen to here whilst they talk a little bit about the latest research on the speed of repetitions, and maybe you can make a better informed decision, not just based on the people you might see in the gym performing these super slow reps and seemingly knowing exactly what they're doing and it's all science-based and what have you. Here's perhaps a counterpoint of view, which is always good to have a listen to before you completely, form your opinions. So without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Mike Israetel, and I think it's Menno Henselmans.
The speed of the concentric and the degree of squeeze/stability at the top. That has to matter a ton for muscle growth, right?
You would think so. In research, it doesn't. There have been numerous reviews now and a lot of studies on this. Although, I would say over the last few years, the research is also quite high quality. Before, not so much. And it quite conclusively shows that as long as you're reaching the same fatigue endpoint and you are controlling the movement, you get very similar adaptations, regardless of tempo. Now, there's not as much research on pauses, so let's skip that for now. But between the concentric and the eccentric phase of movement, so when the muscle is lengthening, typically when you're lowering the weight, the eccentric phase, you need some degree of control, most likely based on the research, but even that's not completely clear, because you need a good level of muscle activation. And normally, your muscles are essentially underworking during that phase because you are much stronger eccentrically than you are concentrically. Because the actin myosin cross bridges that basically make your muscles contract, they are cleaved mechanically. Like when a muscle is lengthening, it kind of happens in part automatically. That's part of the reason that you can literally generate more force. Like it's not just easier to lower the weight, but you can actually generate more force. Now you need to load that. So you would think, I slow down the descent. That doesn't seem to work as well because it reduces how many reps you can do. And in the end, the kind of the time under tension multiplied by tension seems to add up to about the same amount. So research finds that especially when you go beyond just some eccentric control, it doesn't actually matter anymore.
One school of thought, but I'm not so keen on doing that because I suppose I like the sports side of things and I like Olympic lifting, and that's explosive by nature. I like to be able to do box jumps and things like that. Now that's more sort of down the lines of performance. But even if I have a client in front of me, I'm not going to over-egg this super slow, controlled, concise performance of repetitions, because I believe even for building muscle in men or women over 40, I think sometimes it's counterproductive to overemphasize the slow speed of repetitions. Why? Because it gets in the way of performing enough reps to actually deliver the stimulus that you think you're delivering. So if you're going super slow on these reps, the lactic acid or the pain or the tolerance or the wanting to stop, it sets in a lot earlier than if you're performing reps with a normal speed.
Research finds that there is a substantial improvement in most studies. A little bit contentious if it matters if you go to failure, but substantial improvement in both performance and in strength gains when you do an explosive concentric. Like you really explosive, you push the weight up. For muscle hypertrophy, this doesn't seem to matter. I think over the long run, potentially, the higher performance, which should generate more tension, plus the potentially higher strength gains via neural adaptations, one of which is increased muscle activation, that might potentially augment long-term muscle growth. Very speculative at this point, but I think it makes sense to do your concentric with at least a decent degree amount of explosiveness. For bodybuilding purposes, I would say, do it with the intent to maximize how many quality reps you can do. And if you're training for strength, I would say really hammer on that explosiveness, maximum explosiveness every repetition for the movements that you really want to build strength in.
And I also want you to look at the different styles of training employed by some very muscular people. Drug taking aside, if you level the playing field and imagine that everybody's on drugs, then it may be down to their genetics and perhaps the training training programs and how they train as to why they look a certain way. So it'd be interesting to have a look at that as well. Anyway, speak to you soon.